reduced their newsrooms. There are very few journalists doing original news gathering on the big complex stories of the day. They tend to focus on the sensation of the day, the scandal of the day, whatever the controversy is in the House of Commons. They're not spending a lot of time looking at the realities of the oil sands. They're not spending a lot of time looking at some of the complex international issues. I find it sometimes easier to get a quote about a complex subject into the Canadian media by doing an interview with an American at Bloomberg or Reuters, and it gets picked up by the Globe and Mail or other publications, simply because they don't have enough reporters to specialize on some of these topics. And sensation sells. Again, with the fragmented media, everyone's trying to get eyeballs one way or the other, and sometimes big, complicated stories that aren't going to be resolved quickly, simply the public's eyes glaze over. So the news generators say, okay, we won't spend as much time on that.
When we do business like trade with some countries that are not environmentally responsible, I mean, in a short time we are making money, like boosting our economy here. Yeah. On the other side, are we also contributing to the pollution?
Well, good question, and this comes back, and when I said that China is the largest generator of greenhouse gases and pollutants generally, it's partly because of their spectacular continuing growth. But at the same time, while they may be the world's biggest polluter, they spend more money than the rest of the world combined on trying to find environmental solutions. I mean, it's counterproductive. It's not that they're not trying to do the right thing, but they don't want any international interference in terms of tying their hands to hold them. And the same is true in India. Exactly the same is true in Brazil. They want to enjoy spectacular growth, which is potentially there, and they don't want the rest of the world telling them what to do. So it's like human rights. When we bring up human rights, we trade with a lot of countries, and again, China is very often here. We need to be honest in our relationships so that we can talk about better practices in terms of the environment, in terms of human rights, in terms of respecting trademarks and copyrights, but we can also at the same time engage responsibly in interact, and that inevitably comes down to trade, so that we we need to lower barriers. We need to be able to talk to people honestly and to use the relationship on one hand, which may benefit us, like trade, to allow us to engage on better social responsibility, human rights, environmental responsibility, and all of those things. So there's a fine balance. If we were to avoid and boycott trading with some countries, our economy is so small that it would have no impact, and the only people that would be hurt would be ourselves. So it's a balance, but you're right. We must speak up. We can't put trade at all costs without being able to engage on human rights, democracy, freedom, the rule, all of the things that Canadians believe in. Sorry for the long answer.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, sir. I guess with the recent good news from the States yesterday, and I know the government has relaxed or say optimized the environmental assessment process. When can we expect oil to flow from Alberta down the Pacific coast?
Well,
what's holding it up?
Well, we're still in the midst of an environmental panel's review of the project and listening to people. So the panel that's hearing the Enbridge application, for example, will give its recommendations by the end of this year, and the government will make a decision. We'll make a decision. There is the probability of another application from Kinder Morgan with regards to the Trans Mountain pipeline from Alberta to Burnaby, which already exists. And their application in some ways some feel would be easier to consider than Enbridge because it's on an existing right-of-way. It involves expanding the pipe to double the.
So use the existing hardware.
To use the existing right-of-way with bigger pipe or doubling the pipe capacity. So it's going to take a couple of years, but it's I still am an optimist, and I still believe that one way or the other it will happen. And the same, I'm heartened to hear that there is a business plan that some companies see that is profitable and workable to move Western oil to Eastern Canada, to Montreal, to Irving in New Brunswick.
That would be nice if that happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That would be good for all of us. I mean, the big problem now is we are so rich in natural gas, but the price is so low that putting it into the pipeline to get it to Eastern Canada is not cost effective. But that will be resolved too, I think. I mean, that will eventually. Well, the only thing is shale gas is keeping that price low. So there is a possibility, even though this is largely a provincial area of provincial responsibility, I mean, shale gas will be developed in Eastern Canada, I have no doubt. And it's controversial, but at some point I have no doubt it will be developed.
My Lord. Minister, quick question. It's about information improvement or increase or development concerning water pollution reduction measures, as you mentioned. This is, yes, one of the key environmental issues in the country, pollution or raw sewage flowing in Halifax and all this, and it wasn't attended for years and years and years, and suddenly this government does work on it, and you still get very bad press and TV and everything on environmental part, and you very charitably say, well, people are busy and they go after sensations and this, and you didn't mention, you know, bad words like bias and all this, and that's understandable. But here, you know, as an observer of environmental file, two best, and that's not to say, oh, you guys are so wonderful and beautiful and the rest of it. Two most important things is, of course, water pollution with global warming implications and methane and all this, as we all know. Second issue, of course, was massive increase in national park network and all this work. Again, nobody did anything since '72 under government. All that is good. Two main issues, your government or this government or our government did substantial work on it. You are, of course, a communication and media expert for 40 years. And for whatever reasons, this is not reported, this is not known. What other measures, and you say, well, I don't get time with our media and I have to Reuters or whoever. Is there a systematic approach to get the message out? Sorry, that was one short question is how to get this positive message out.
Well, no, it's a good question, and you may have noticed that since 2006, our government, for many major announcements, doesn't make the announcement of the day in Ottawa. We go to smaller communities across the country. Even Toronto, there's a better response to a major announcement than simply doing it in Ottawa with a very skeptical, if not cynical, press gallery, which very often considers itself to be the official opposition. I mean, you see it every day. They're frustrated that the opposition isn't as smart as they think they are. So, and part of the problem, and I probably share part of the responsibility for this, is when I was working at CanWest and we bought the former Southern newspapers, the Citizen, the Gazette, the National Post, you know, papers across the country. Our editorial team on the print side decided to follow the British example of putting the best writers on the paper on the front page, the columnists. But when we put the columnists on the front pages of the newspapers, and the competitors, the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, responded and put their columnists on the front pages, a lot of Canadians didn't realize the subtle difference that they weren't getting straight news reporting with both sides of any given issue. They were getting a pure opinion, sometimes very good opinion, but they were getting opinion unfettered by balance. And that sort of has also been compounded by 24/7 talk radio, by 24/7 some of the television talk shows, so that the natural slow evolution of stories, of news, has been now heightened to the point that people expect a new development of, breaking news. You see, during, you see some of the American CNN breaking news, and they've got flames at the bottom of the picture. So that people have now, I think, the attention span and also the patience span of a lot of information consumers is, well, if it's not going to be resolved today, I don't need to think about it today. I don't need to inform myself today. And I think that that's, in the long run, that's very dangerous, because a lot of decisions don't have to be complicated, but if you're not informed at all, you don't make a good decision. So I think all we can do is keep going. The other thing, and this is kind of amusing, I'm not much for social media, tweet and Twitter. I have a Facebook page, which is sort of basic information, and I know that some people like to look in and see what's happening, day-to-day events. I'm not big with tweets and so forth. But I was on Don Martin's program at the beginning of the week, and we did an interview about new regulations for heavy trucks, which are good regulations. They're going to be cost effective, they're going to save Canadians money, they're also going to help the environment. 2 days later, I was walking by Don in the lobby of the House of Commons, and he said, "Oh, the Twitter sphere said that I was too easy on you. The next time you're on, I've got to yell at you, and I've got to argue with you." And I said, "Oh, if you do what you have to do," because his producers see all of these tweets saying, "Oh, you were too easy on Kent, or Kent got away with murder," or whatever they said. So the producer says, "Oh, we have to listen to that noise." And increasingly, I mean, that's just a little example of what's going on in the broader world. If you look at the editorial pages, letters to the editor, same thing. You're seeing influence, so the paper listens to the loudest voices, and that's the way they